Peace Corps gives us a chance to show a side of our country which is too often submerged. Our desire to live in peace, our desire to be of help. There can be no greater service to our country, and no source of pride more real than to be a member of the Peace Corps of the United States.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the My Peace Corps Story podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Lloyd, and I'm here to help tell the stories of current and returned Peace Corps volunteers. If you like what you hear today, be sure to let me know over at mypeacecorpsstory.com and connect with me on Instagram at My Peace Corps Story or on Facebook by searching for My Peace Corps Story. Additionally, head on over to Apple Podcast and leave a review for the show. 5-star reviews are extremely appreciated, but more than anything, I want to know what you think so I can better serve my audience. Now, you might think that I'm joking when I say that, but I truly mean it. I got my first 3 out of 5-star review. Every other one has been 5 out of 5 stars, but they gave me some good advice. Zulu PC Mama says, keep it up. 3 stars. Tyler has a knack for seeking out interesting Peace Corps stories, but some of his lines of questioning feel a bit bland. Sometimes he doesn't respond to things that his interviewees mention are super poignant. Keep up the empathy and turn up your energy, and you'll have a brilliant podcast. Zulu PC Mama, thank you, and I'll take that to heart and try to improve. As I do this podcast, I want to make sure that I grow as an interviewer. Today on the show, I interview Helen Schaefer and Blake Thomas of Tiny House Coffee Roasters. Helen and Blake started Tiny House Coffee Roasters while serving as Peace Corps volunteers in Nicaragua, and they continue to work hand in hand with members of their communities. They collaborate directly with local producers, sharing more work and more benefits. I had a great conversation with them, learning about their service and how they continue to serve with their company, Tiny House Coffee Roasters. I think you guys will enjoy the show, so without further ado, here it is.
This is
my Peace Corps.
Peace Corps.
My Peace Corps.
My Peace Corps story.
Story.
My name is Helen Schaefer.
And my name is Blake Thomas. This is our Peace Corps story.
Helen and Blake, how are you doing this morning?
Doing great.
Yeah, doing pretty well. Thanks for chatting with us today.
Yeah, I'm really excited with it. So do you guys have coffee at the ready?
We're showing you right now.
Right,
Oh,
good,
yes.
good. Yeah,
Cool.
you know, it's audio, so the visual is lost. So I mean, people are missing out.
Yeah.
You can vouch for us. It's there.
Yeah, good. And people will know in a second while I'm asking you if you guys have your coffee ready. But just starting off, if each of you could talk a little bit about your Peace Corps service, where you served, what you did, and then what you're doing now. So sort of take us along the timeline from Peace Corps to present day.
Perfect. So I'll start. Like I said, my name is Helen Schaefer, and I am from North Carolina. I went to school in University of Miami in Florida. And after that, I really wanted to serve abroad. So my senior year of college is when I really started doing the application process for the Peace Corps, which I don't know if it was the same for you, but it took me about a year to do the whole interview process, which I've heard it's a lot more streamlined now. I had a friend who applied and was accepted within months, which is pretty neat. So for me, though, it took a year. And then I was a health volunteer in Nicaragua. So my background is in exercise physiology, sports medicine. So I was down there. That's really where I started transitioning into sexual health education. So I was in a border town called San Fernando, Nicaragua. And it's a border town in northern Nicaragua with Honduras. And that's where I did a lot of work on HIV prevention, adolescent pregnancy prevention. I did a lot of work with women's groups. And so down in the Peace Corps is actually in 2012 to 2014. So I met this guy, Blake, and we'll hear about him in a second. And so after the Peace Corps is when I came to Austin, Texas, where Blake's actually from, and I got a job with Planned Parenthood of Greater Texas. So that's where I now do health education with underserved populations here in the Austin, Texas area. So it's pretty exciting. I like to joke that my work is Peace Corps 2.0 because I still make papillographos, which means like poster board. So I'll draw little birth control methods on a poster board, and I'll wrap it up and take it with me like I'm writing on in the Peace Corps. Yeah, I very much took my Peace Corps habits with me here to do my sexual health education work with Planned Parenthood. So people are probably like, wait a second, Helen, why aren't you using a PowerPoint right now? I'm like, no, this poster board's fine. I'm just going to stick it on the wall. We're going to do icebreakers. It's going to be great. So, yeah, my Peace Corps experience really shaped the work that I do now. And then with Blake's intro, we'll hear more about the coffee company that we started as well, due to the Peace Corps. So.
Cool. So I jumped into Peace Corps from grad school. I was at the University of Tennessee, finishing up in 2012. I have a master's in agricultural economics. So I also entered Nicaragua in 2012, and just coming out of school, I kind of had my eye on agriculture and specifically Nicaraguan agriculture. So I got down there as a small business volunteer. Went through training, and I was my site was up in the northern part of the country, about an hour from where Helen was, by the Honduran border. And it was, most of the country is coffee country, but I was immersed in coffee country where I was located. So my main task was teaching an entrepreneurial course to high school seniors. So we just basically we taught business fundamentals, anything from accounting to marketing to scoping out a business plan. So that was my main job. But I always kind of had my eye towards agriculture, and based on where I was, it was just coffee everywhere. So I started spending a lot of time with the town's cooperative, kind of learning about the supply side of the market and how coffee goes from, a seedling to a crop into a mill and then onto a container ship to go, be it the US or Europe or Japan. Coffee was just fascinating to me. It's so complex, and there's so many men, women, and children that touch it along the way. It's just, I don't know, it really kind of blew me away. So, I was, in addition to my, day-to-day tasks with the class and teaching and all that, I was always trying to learn everything I could about coffee and spend time with the farmers and on the farms. And then, by the time we were finishing up our service and kind of, transitioning to coming back home, we had built really strong relationships with a handful of farmers down there. So the conversations kind of started. I wouldn't call it anything super serious by the time we left Peace Corps, but the conversations had started, hey, it'd be really neat if we could, get back to the States, settle in and try and do something with you guys and your coffee. So that was there. It was, I'd say a little bit on the back burner, but we did a little bit of traveling after Peace Corps and, trekked through South America. And then, so we were back in Austin, Texas, which is where we decided on moving back to in 2014. I got a job with just like a chemical company here based out of Austin. Just had to find something to pay the bills. And I'd say it was probably 4 or 5 months into that, I knew that job was just not going to work out. And I started studying coffee and really doing a little like market research around the Austin area to see if the space was there for another coffee firm. And I was running around another guy who imports Guatemalan coffee and just really studying the scene. And I don't remember the time, an hour, or day when I specifically thought, okay, I think I can make a run of this. But sometime in late 2014, Helen and I decided, like, all right, let's give it a go. So we started calling the guys and asking, hey, like, we don't have a ton of capital right now to start this company, but we'd love the idea of working with you guys and getting a coffee company up and running. Would you be interested in giving us this coffee on consignment? And as we get this thing up and running and sell this, we'll not only pay you for the coffee, but we'll pay you a premium on top of that. So, at the time, the market rate for coffee was something like $1.15. The guys are dealing with specialty coffee, so they probably would have gotten more in the range of like $1.50, $1.60 per pound of their coffee by, extending themselves out and kind of going through our model. We gave them $3.25 for every pound that they gave us.
Wow.
So yeah, quite a substantial return for them. And so it was, I'd say, there was a lot of months in between that I'll kind of just, zip over because it was a lot of reading books and figuring out how we were going to do the accounting, how we were going to register with the Secretary of State. I mean, just a lot of nitpicky admin stuff that just has to be done. But the coffee finally landed in June of 2015, and we had our little roaster that we were roasting in the carport, and at the time our back porch, and we were up and running, and it's the rest is kind of history. We got the company up and running, and here we are.
Yep. And to finish with that, we just paid our producers for the third year in a row. So we've been working with these guys for 3 years now, and it's pretty cool to hear about things that they've been able to do. They're really excited about investing more in their farms. Or one farmer, Donaldo, who's kind of our boots on the ground, his daughter just finished graphic design school. It's just cool to hear about the rippling effects of how excited these guys are that they're able to connect their specialty coffee with folks in the United States and impact it makes on them. So
awesome. So now I guess I want to go back to your Peace Corps experience. So everything that led you to this point. And just starting off, I'd like to ask people, one of their favorite Peace Corps memories. So Helen, I'll just start off with you. And if you could just tell me one of your favorite Peace Corps memories and why is it something that has stayed with you, 3 years later?
Yeah. So I said in my little pre-questionnaire when I was filling this out, what is your one favorite Peace Corps experience? And I cheated and I wrote a couple. So I'm going to cite those. Little moments where hopping in the back of a pickup truck to ride down the highway, because you were either going north or south. There were no other roads. So if you were waiting for a ride pointing in one direction and there was a truck going that way, you just hopped in the back and you knew you were getting in the right direction. So moments like that, hopping in the back of a truck, feeling the sun on your face and just sitting there and enjoying the moment and thinking, wow, here I am in this incredible country that is now my second home, and just closing my eyes and sitting and embracing that moment and feeling happy and peaceful in that. I think my Peace Corps service is a lot of little moments like that are my favorite. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then Blake, how about yourself?
My favorite Peace Corps story, I guess it's a little cheesy because I'm sitting here with Helen, but I got super into running when I was in the Peace Corps. I was a bit of a runner before I went down there, but nothing like my time in Nicaragua. It was this beautiful, serene backdrop that was, mountainous and stunning, and it was just the perfect place to, really have a love affair with running. So one day, Helen, we were just starting up a friendship. We weren't dating at the time, but she came to my site and we had planned this long run because she was training for some crazy. It was some crazy like adventure run that was taking place in Nicaragua. I think it was something like 15 miles or thereabout, and we were going to run into the mountains from my town about 10 miles or so. And by the time we were on our way back and almost home, we were both just gassed. And she was running down this, dirt road and so tired she seemed unable to avoid running through this cow patty right in the middle of the road. And I could see it happening, and I just remember her being like, Helen, oh my God, you just ran right through that pile of crap. And she just kind of looked at me, shrugged her shoulders, and was
I don't care.
I don't care. And I was like, I remember kind of at that moment, like thinking, this is pretty cool, and she's pretty cool too. And yeah, that's my fondest memories.
That's a good memory. And then I guess, so then Blake, I'm going to ask you because I want to know more. You only wrote me a sentence when I asked you about your least favorite memory, but you wrote being stranded on a coffee farm in guerrilla territory for 3 days. And that just warrants a whole lot of explanation. So
right, and that's definitely sensationalized. Okay, so one of the farmers I met down in Nicaragua, I don't remember
Carlos.
how his name was Carlos. He had a big coffee plantation, not super close to my site. We met him kind of in a roundabout way.
We met him through a fellow Peace Corps friend of ours. He helped organize a medical brigade. Like he helped coordinate in a medical brigade of people visiting in the Jinotega area where it's notorious for still being kind of unsettled from the Civil War era, and supposedly that's where the guerrillas are. So that's a little bit of backstory. And
Okay.
he says that he has one of the biggest plantations in Nicaragua, but we have yet to verify that. But
Yeah.
so.
I think everyone is destined to meet a handful of just peculiar characters that really stand out in their service, and Carlos was definitely one of those characters that was was a big part of our service. But he had an amazing farm and quite a big operation there. So I asked him one time. I wanted to coordinate just going down there for a day and just and staying a night just to kind of see the farm, see the operation, and learn a little bit. And so I was speaking with him, and I was like, okay, let's go this day because you're going to be coming the following morning, and then I'll ride back into town with you that morning. So I went out there, and I was spending time with in the field at the mill, and it was getting late in the day, and and cell phone service was extremely limited out there, and it was getting late in the day, and I remember getting on my phone and calling Carlos and being like, hey, you're not here yet. Are we heading into town tomorrow? And he kind of pushed off and was like, no, I'm not going to make it. I'll be there in the morning. And then the following morning came and called him back, and I was like, hey, Carlos, you're still not here. Are we going back into town? Because the Peace Corps office is going to get pretty upset if they don't know where I am. And still nothing. And that went on the rest of the day, the rest of the following day. And, this was a secluded farm that, no one, people weren't just going in and out on a regular basis. And Carlos claimed he had heard of some, I don't know, guerrilla activity. I don't know what he meant by that in the area. So that was why he didn't want to come out to the farm. And I just remember thinking, well, that's kind of ridiculous because you invited me out here and you should probably get me out of here. But so that was kind of unpleasant to be stuck out there for 3 days. But I guess a good story in retrospect.
So I just have some more questions. So were you out there alone?
No, that would be insane. That would be crazy. No, it was a farm. It was a bustling farm operation. But so a lot of there, it was coffee picking season. All the coffee pickers were there, and that was one of the cool things to see. 80 men, women, and children out there picking coffee cherries. And no, I mean, I was staying like they had a house at the farm, and I had a little. I wasn't starving to death or anything like that, but just a little stranded.
Okay, because first when I read it, I was just picturing you like hiding amongst coffee trees for 3 days, like trying to stay out of gorillas, just eating raw coffee beans, just like on a caffeine high, just freaking out in the jungle. Interesting, yeah, good picture, but your story is also very, very good.
Yeah. No. I mean, it wasn't me like in the rain and a bunch of gorillas running around me or anything like that. No, just coming up with an excuse to not come out to the farm. And, yeah.
No, I had many friends that were those interesting characters that always made your service better and gave you those good stories. And whenever they asked me to do something, I was like, well, why not? Even if this goes horribly wrong, it's going to be a good story.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then Helen, how about yourself? What do you have to counter 3 days being stranded on a coffee farm?
Oh my gosh, refreshing. What did I cite in mine? I'm trying to think of.
You
sad
said being woken up in the middle of the night by mice eating your food.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I lived with a host family. It was Juan, Jasenia, and their 4 kiddos. And so I had a room in our house, and so it was. I had non-dirt floors, which was pretty luxurious. It was cement floors, but the at night I could hear. I'm a pretty light sleeper, and I would hear like just running around, and then I would hear like ee, 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 like something crunching, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, because I had a little pantry up in the corner, and so moments like that were probably my least favorite. Just thinking, oh my gosh, this is my life, and I hear little mice around, and now I can't sleep. So not necessarily because I was scared of the mice. I got pretty good at trapping them by the end of my service. So that and 2.5 years of cold showers. I think that's something that my body never got used to. It was a little shock every time that freezing cold water hit me. So I think those are my favorite memories, but they keep me real. So.
Okay. So you definitely don't miss those cold showers, but what do you miss about your time in the Peace Corps?
So kind of how we were referencing the commonalities of the Peace Corps experience being the pace of life. I forgot over there living in Nicaragua how extremely fast we are over here all the time. And so what I miss is walking over to my neighbor's house just to sit with them on the front porch and share a cafecito or a little cafe and just kind of hanging out and not necessarily talking about a whole bunch of stuff, but just enjoying each other's company. So moments like that and being very present, not having a ton of technology and distractors around us. So the simpler way of life. I definitely appreciate that. And Blake and I look at each other sometimes as we're knee deep in farmers markets and businesses that we work with and thinking, oh my gosh, do we just need to flee back to Nicaragua? So I think that ultimately life is a balance of the two. But I reflecting on those, just being present and simpler, living simply.
Mm-hmm. And then Blake, how about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I could parrot everything Helen just said. She summed it up pretty nicely. But I do miss that sense of community and maybe all across the developing world. I think here in the U.S., being a good neighbor is kind of leaving everyone else in the neighborhood alone. Whereas Nicaragua, being a good neighbor was going by from time to time to, like Helen said, knock on the door, come in, just sit down and just be present and have a conversation. And that, I grew up in the suburbs of Austin, Texas. Like that definitely wasn't normal for me, but I liked it and how it got me out of my shell. And it just felt real and nice. And certainly that pace of life where it's okay to just sit down and breathe and have a nice conversation with someone, even if it's the same conversation you've had 35 times about the weather and particular family members of it's fine. And I miss that. It was really refreshing and I think needed for me when I went into Peace Corps.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel that you've been able to maintain that? I mean, Helen, you said, sometimes you sort of look at Blake and wonder like, okay, what are we doing? We've started this business. We're working, not 9 to 5, but probably, 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. and trying to make it all work. But how in all that of, the necessities of starting a business and living in the United States, how have you guys been able to maintain that essence of Peace Corps?
All right. So I was thinking, oh gosh, all right, my turn. So having to maintain that is, I like to journal. So for me, kind of reflecting back on where I was in this time 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and trying to check myself every once in a while and say, okay, is this really important in the long term? And then actually, it's also really helpful for me to remember when I was in Nicaragua, as I'm sure you were aware too, you were saying you have a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it feels like too much time. I'm like, what am I doing? So I remember being abroad, living in Nicaragua, thinking, okay, I am ready to get back to the United States. I'm very passionate about working in healthcare and continuing a career in healthcare. And I knew that I needed to come back to the States to do that. So kind of recognizing that when I'm here and feeling overworked, that in Nicaragua, I wanted more work. Mm-hmm. It's always the grass is greener on the other side. So having that perspective in mind. And then I think that living abroad also made me realize that material things are not the key to success. We met people in Nicaragua who would play with, kids would roll an old tire down the street and have a blast. And it just goes to show me that we don't need to buy the fanciest stuff to find happiness. So I definitely think that that's influenced my life here, is being less materialistic and not needing so much stuff. So those are things that I've taken with me to kind of hold on to what I learned in Nicaragua. Mm-hmm. So, and my final thing is holding on to Nicaragua is another part that's important, is maintaining the relationships that we met down there, of people that I met down there. For example, one of my best friends from my hometown in Nicaragua, her name's Tanya, and her dad is actually one of the producers that we work with the most closely. And so we text on WhatsApp, which is one way that technology is incredible. I'm able to text the Nicaragua that we work with. So keeping those relationships really keeps me grounded to that time in my life as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, Blake, do you have any advice for, return Peace Corps volunteers, ways that they can, keep the essence of community alive and not get bogged down by American fast-paced life?
It's hard. And I wouldn't say that I've been ultra successful with it. Personally, I've come back, I've started a small business, which I've learned is a tremendous amount of work, but I don't know. I certainly miss it. But I also embrace this new chapter in my life, which is, working hard and trying to, garner an entrepreneurial spirit. I'll always, appreciate and cherish those times in Nicaragua. And I think they have changed me and made me able to, be a little bit more calm and take a deep breath every so often. And I guess my advice would be always reflect on that as kind of this ever-changing experience. And there's different chapters and really, embrace, your time in the Peace Corps and always, remember what it was like when you were there and try and use it as, a positive force whenever you enter your next chapter in life, after Peace Corps, be it working for the government, working in the private sector, starting a business, teaching, try and use those experiences as a Peace Corps volunteer in a positive way.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely good things. And I've not always been the best at, maintaining a balance, but this podcast is actually one of the ways that I'm trying to do that, to connect with other volunteers and sort of have a constant reminder of the things that I enjoyed in that community to try to stay in touch with it and also remind other people as well at the same time. So definitely good points.
Helen and I are also lucky in that we had the experience together, and now we live together, and we get the luxury of being together and just being able to rattle off stories of Nicaragua. And do you remember this time, or do you remember that?
Yeah.
So that we're lucky in that regard.
Mm-hmm. And also with, what you're doing with Tiny House Coffee Roasters,
right?
You're staying connected to that community that you developed in Nicaragua. So I'd like for you guys to talk a little bit more about that company, because I first came to know you guys through Instagram and looking at your guys' photos, and then just got really interested in your model of working directly with those farmers. I remember the one photo that you posted earlier this month, I think, with Hugo getting his check and money, and it was great to see that you guys, even though you're here in the U.S., you're doing a lot of the stuff that like I did in Peace Corps. I was actually a small business volunteer working with the local farmers and trying to get their products into the larger cities and working with basic business skills with them. So it's great to see the stuff that you guys are doing now back in the U.S. So I'd like for you guys to just talk a little bit more and, shamelessly promote yourself, because you guys are doing some really cool work.
Oh, yeah. And I'll start with that. I really liked that picture. I put up of Hugo holding $100 bills in his hand. If you zoom in, you can see that it's just a big wad of cash.
Oh yeah. No, it was impressive. It's like, okay. Yeah. Hugo's pulling some money down right now.
Hugo's really happy.
Makes
right
more
now.
money than I do.
Yeah. So we joke about that. So it's really exciting working with these producers for the third year in a row. And so that picture actually was taken by my friend Tanya on her phone, because her dad, Donaldo, he's kind of, since his daughter has WhatsApp, we're able to communicate with him the most out of all the farmers. So for the money, we wired Donaldo this large sum of money, and he then had it at his house, all in $100 bills. So then the other farmers come to his house and they sign a piece of paper saying the amount of coffee that they had given, the rate, and they signed the piece of paper saying, I, Hugo, received X amount of dollars for my coffee, and then they hand over this big wad of cash. So that's our current payment system in Nicaragua, which is Donaldo is our ATM. He's been very helpful for distributing the cash. But I also just think it's funny that I'm sure in that picture Hugo is just elated, but it's I don't know if it was the same where you are, but when folks take pictures in Nicaragua, they like to have like a very stoic face.
Yep.
And so Hugo and Donaldo, they always look very stern in their photos when they're just these very jolly and jovial folks, but the pictures don't convey that. So I don't know. I always love seeing photos of them though. So that's all I had, my little plug. And then Tiny House Coffee Roasters, it's the best. Blake, take it away.
Yeah, so Tiny House Coffee Roasters, we're a micro roaster here in Austin, and we really focus on responsible green coffee sourcing from small producer farmers. So first and foremost, that starts with our relationships with the Nicaraguan coffee farmers that we, worked with as Peace Corps volunteers. And as the company has grown and evolved, that has our scope of coffee that we bring in has expanded. So we now bring in coffee from Costa Rica, Colombia, Brazil, East Africa, and we're a small company. We don't have, we don't have the resources at this time to go directly to all those countries and foster relationships on an individual basis with farmers. We were lucky with the Nicaraguan guys. So for now, we are working with importers that are sourcing coffee in a responsible way and treating these farmers right. And we're starting with them. And we're just trying to find new and creative ways to get specialty coffee out and about in the market. So, the first way that comes to mind typically is you go to a nice fancy coffee shop and, pulls you a shot of espresso and that's specialty coffee. Well, I think that's going to be a very evolving, it's a very rapidly changing
model.
No, not model. I think specialty coffee is going to change tremendously over the next 5, 10, 20 years. I think it's going to be something that's not just in these very niche coffee shops in and around big cities. I think specialty coffee is going to be much more widespread, and it's going to be available in offices, in hotels, in a gas station. So what we try and do as a company is try and be on the forefront of new spaces in the market that are ready for specialty coffee. And, the first thing that we've really gone after is the office scene here in Austin. And one of the ways I'd say the primary way that we're able to deliver on that is through cold brew and through cold brew coffee kegs. So that's been a huge part of our business and something we didn't really anticipate in the beginning. But so right now we are cold brewing this coffee that we're bringing in. We, we are putting it in 5-gallon kegs and delivering it to a variety of offices around the Austin area. We're also delivering it to some hotels and even a gas station in kind of a nice up-and-coming neighborhood that just wanted to do something different. So we think that's really cool, and we're excited to continue learning about the market and seeing what we can do as a small company to take advantage of these market changes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely thank you for the good work that you guys are doing to caffeinate the masses. Coffee is one of my drinks of choice. Without it, I don't think I'd be a functioning human being. So, and you're also doing good, for farmers back where you served and elsewhere. Just so you guys have managed to, I guess, for a lot of these farmers, cut out the middleman. What sort of profits do they see with you guys versus maybe a traditional sort of coffee, if they were selling it to one of the big guys, one of the big names? What's the difference there?
Yeah, so when we started working with our farmers, the market rate for coffee at that time was around $1, $1.15. And so when we started working with our farmers in Nicaragua, we ended up they would give us the coffee on consignment, and then we paid them in installments throughout the year. So it was a little bit more delayed of a payment than if they just went to an exporter in the country and sold it. Mm-hmm. But we ended up paying them $3.25 a pound. So they were getting, almost 3 times what they were making before. And so that was huge for them. And for them to have that deferred payment, they were willing to take that risk with us because they trusted us, and we knew that we were going to pay them back by the end of the year. So by having that relationship with us and trusting us to give us coffee, they actually sent their coffee to us the first year without even seeing a dime from us. So these guys packed up thousands of pounds of their very best specialty coffee and sent it to the United States, trusting that we would be good stewards of it and sell it and pay them for it. So that was pretty incredible. And so, and then I think that the fair trade price has a bottom guarantee of about $1.50 a pound, just to kind of put things in perspective. So
okay, so you guys are paying more than twice for what fair trade the bottom of fair trade is.
Yeah.
Wow.
For Nicaraguan coffees, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for coming on the show and talking with me. And then I always like to end it with sharing a favorite quote or saying from your time in the Peace Corps. So Blake, if you'd like to start off with your favorite quote or saying or just something you'd like to leave us with.
Yeah, I guess the one that I heard more than anything else was "Oy, gringuito," which is "Hey, little white guy," which I'd hear a lot on those before mentioned runs. So yeah, I'm sure it wasn't a common sight. So they'd always say "Oy, gringuito."
Who are you running from?
Yeah, that's mine.
And then for mine, I would say hay más tiempo que vida. So there's more time than life, which I think is pretty symbolic of how the Nicaraguan perspective of slow down, like there's enough time, there's more time than life. So that's always a nice reminder to slow down and appreciate the now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely thank you for slowing down and taking, an hour out of your day to talk with me and then share your story with others on this podcast. So thank you very much. And, I look forward to seeing your company grow.
Yeah, thank you. It's always incredible to reflect on our Peace Corps service. So I'm glad that you're doing this and connecting us with the Peace Corps community.
Thanks, Tyler. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Once again, if you want to stay better connected with me and the My Peace Corps Story podcast, head on over to mypeacecorpsstory.com. If you want to know my personal Peace Corps story, please check out my new book, Service Disrupted, available on Amazon. Every volunteer has a story. What's yours?